We are rolling.
Awesome. Hey, Izzy, welcome to the podcast.
Cheers, brother. Good to be on here.
Yeah, cheers. Leading up to the podcast and actually driving here, I was thinking about how, reflecting on your story and how challenges usually open up opportunities and how you've sort of captured that in every sense of the way. So I guess before we start, do you mind just introducing yourself? Who are you?
Yeah, I'm Izzy Whitley, born and bred in Gizzy. Got out of there at 16. Got up to Auckland for school for the last couple of years, and kind of found my way to jumping in, do a couple of setbacks. Ended up jumping in and starting a business called Auckland Labour Hire originally, when I was 21. So, and look, started to get a bit of momentum with that, and got some traction and got the right people around. So I do that. That's kind of where I spend most of my time in the day. And then a few years ago, started up a business with a bunch of fellas called Fit Out Solutions. So yeah, so keeps me busy, keeps me out of trouble. We got 4 branches at ALH now across the North Island, and looking to add another few more this year. So be an exciting year.
How did you get to, set up your business? What was this kind of backstory behind that?
Well, when I left school, I went to Westlake, left school, got into my building apprenticeship. I then thought, I actually got mugged in town, and had to have shoulder reconstruction. So me and a couple of my mates.
Shit, did you win or did you just fully got mugged?
The reason why I have the reconstruction is because we lost. So I actually had to have like a shoulder surgery, which put me out of building for a little bit. And in the time I was off building, I kind of thought, hey, I'm not necessarily enjoying it too much. And then literally when that all happened, went into surgery, I'd just lost a few days before surgery, actually, my dad passed away with a battle with mental health, which is pretty tough. And I think there's an underlying inspiration there to make a cool workplace, because I know that he didn't have one. So I knew I wanted to stay in building, but I didn't want to go back on the tools. So I thought I'd just change it up and freshen things up a little bit and change the direction of my life from what I was doing. So I enrolled at uni, failed uni, I was terrible at uni, and started playing footy a little bit more seriously. And then kind of was necessarily on a path to probably nowhere with both uni and football, certainly football. And then I'd probably had about 8 games that season or that year, and each game was getting tougher and tougher, in the fact that I was feeling more knackered 5 minutes before I was the game before. So I kind of got to the last game. It was like half-time. Before half-time, I was absolutely knackered. Like I felt like I'd ran a marathon. I have done one, so I know exactly what I was like, geez, I feel like my body's been put through a marathon. I've only played for 45 minutes. And I kind of thought, just out of interest, I'll go and get my asthma checked out. And so I finished that game, don't know how, but I did. Then I went to go to the doctors and say, can I just get my asthma, checked out my lung capacity, whatnot. And they said, look, your lungs have kind of never been better. Don't know what's going on. I said, all right, I'll kind of see you guys later. They said, Izzy, why don't we just quickly run an ECG on you, which is an echocardiogram. I still don't know how they work or what they look like or what they even look for. But
is that like a scan?
Yeah, so they just plug you up, right? They kind of almost put a bra on you, but and like sticky things and get a good reading at your heart. And the doctor just freaked out. Like I could tell that something was really wrong once she kind of saw the scan, and she said, hey, look, we think you've had a couple of heart attacks. We need to get you to hospital immediately.
Holy shit.
And I was like, I'm like 21, I'm fit as anything. Like I've never been fitter. I'm kind of running quicker kilometres than I've ever ran and whatnot. And I was kind of in disbelief. But then I kind of went to the hospital, and then, that's kind of when found out that I'd actually I got diagnosed with condition called cardiomyopathy, which is like a heart disease. So basically my heart was inflamed and swollen, and that could have come from overtraining. It could have come from having a flu and just not resting when I had the flu. So it was actually that kind of 1 week. I was in hospital, I think, for 10 days. But I almost had a chance to reassess my life. Like, I couldn't get out of hospital. I had to stay in there. There's nothing I could do. I'd fast-tracked trying to deal with Dad's passing. So I was almost in tears just every day in the Blimmin hospital trying to deal with that.
How long did all this happen after your dad's passing?
So Dad passed away in December, and then not the following year, the one after. So about a year and a half. It was kind of in like April or May, not the next year, the one after. So it was a pretty quick turnaround, right? It was kind of one blow, then that one. I was kind of like, oh my goodness, what's next? What's next for me? And I kind of just thought I need to do something. I'm not going to be involved in football anymore. I'm not going to be getting coaching or doing coaching, so I can't really bring an income in. I'm failing at uni, like, terribly. Something needs to change, and it needs to change quickly. And I kind of just thought, look, I'm going to start a labour hire company. I always knew my boss was making a few bucks off me an hour. And I just thought, if I could just get 5 people out, then that'll be fine, and that'll tie me over to when I get to what I need to get to next. And so I got out of hospital. That would have been in May, and then I was pondering on starting the business, then incorporated in August. And then, kind of didn't look back, and before I knew it, I was too thick into it to turn it back from it, So I kind of got too far in too soon to walk away. It wasn't something I could just pack up, and then I guess the addiction for more kind of started kicking in. But it was really fortunate. I slugged it out for myself. I was still getting study link because I was still doing a couple of papers. So I was living off $264 a week. I got like a solo parent thing, so I didn't have to pay it back. I was living in my best mate's, one of my best mates' nana's flats out the back. I was paying him $120. Then I was kind of putting petrol into my car to get to job sites. And I'd go to the supermarket every Sunday and buy 21 Maggie soup cup noodles so I could have 3 meals a day. And then if I had some leftovers, I'd get a few cans of Coke. and that was how I honestly lived for like a year and a bit. So I had to like slug it out. But I think the fortunate thing, looking back on my upbringing, I had a really humble upbringing. I came from nothing, but I always felt like I never needed anything. So I never had a lot. So being that it's not like I ever had to reduce my lifestyle. That was a bit grim, but it wasn't like I wasn't actually scaling down my lifestyle. Do you know what I mean? I still had my own nana flat, which at the time I just thought was the bee's knees.
Yeah, it was great to live it.
So that was generally how like ALH got going, and I just I transferred all my competitive kind of nature and attributes from football, and just put it into the business and just went for it like for a year and a half and started. I started with $500, and I went in there every day for the first 18 months not knowing if we were going to go bankrupt the next day, because we were waiting on creditors all the time to pay on time so we could pay on time. So it was just an absolute whirlwind of a friggin' first 18 months on how it all got started.
That is crazy. And I think that goes back to the point around, a challenge plus an opportunity, and then look what happens. What do you consider, or what do you bring it down to around your sort of perspective to actually hone in on finding an opportunity within labour hire? Where did that come from? I honestly did no competitor analysis. I didn't know who my competitors were. I didn't know if there was an opportunity there or not. My ignorance was bliss, right? Like, I just kind of got into it, and I thought, this will just be my bridge to get me to where I want to get to next. So I didn't necessarily see an opportunity that I thought could have been great. I actually rang up Rob. Rob's our chairman now. Rob Fife. Yep. So for those listening, he's the former CEO of Air New Zealand, correct?
He's a legend. He's an absolute weapon.
Shout out, Rob.
Yeah. Good fella, really good guy, and just an awesome mentor to have. I never forget, I rang up Rob. This is before he and his wife Sarah were investors or involved. And I rang him up and I said, hey, Rob, I've got this guy that wants to buy half of ALH. And he said, oh, okay, well, what's he offering? I said, he wants to buy 49% for 25 grand. I said, sounds like a hell of a deal. I'm going to do it. He said to me, is he kind of somewhere along the lines, if you do that, like, I'm kind of not going to, do you know what I mean? Almost saying, look, if you do that, you're a bit of an idiot, like, in short. And he said, you've kind of got the hunger and drive to make this a 15, 25, $50 million business. And that's when I knew there was an opportunity there. I had to hear that. And then it's almost became possessed with it. Do you know what I mean? I was kind of like, all right, well, if he's saying that, that's all I needed to hear at that time. So that was probably where I first sensed the opportunity. Before that, I didn't think there was one. I had no idea. I didn't know how big our competitors were. I didn't even know who they were. Like, I was kind of just,
the ignorance of being
young and
startup
just
entrepreneur,
trying
take on the world.
And it's interesting, right? Like, I don't necessarily consider myself too creative. Like, I surround myself with a bunch of I know a few entrepreneurs and stuff. Like my friend Liam, like, he's every other month he's almost coming up with a new idea or something. Do you know what I mean? I look at kind of someone like him. I think how creative and kind of ideas orientated he is. And then I kind of look at me, I'm like, geez, I'm a bit boring. But if I can get stuck into something, I can get stuck into it. So, so that was when the first opportunity I felt arose and kind of gave me the opportunity to get going.
If we just rewind back to, you've launched ALH and you've sort of found this opportunity within the market. What did the first sort of 8 to 12 months look like, apart from the facts you had $500 to start it, living off, 2-minute noodles?
Yeah.
Were they hard to get going? Because I think what a lot of young people particularly find it hard to come to grips with is actually finding that courage to start something, because once you put something out there, it's out there forever. And a lot of people don't have that confidence to see an idea through. Yeah. So, if you can speak on those 8 to 12 months.
Those 8 to 12 months, I wouldn't wish them upon my worst enemy. Like, they were that grueling. Like, when people say they're tough, it's tough. It's so lonely. Like, I can't explain, like, how lonely the grind is. Whether you've got a girlfriend at the time or a bunch of mates, they still can't get into your head and understand the stresses and pressures that you're kind of going through at the time, because I had no one to bounce any ideas off in that first period. And it was just tough. My days started at 4:30. I'd drive into the CBD. I lived on the shore. I'd leave at 4:30 and get into the city just before 5. I'd park up in the CBD so I didn't have to muck around with the traffic. And then I'd just work outside, like, the Hollywood bakery that was in the Wynyard Quarter. Like, I'd just go and pull up there and sometimes I didn't even want to buy a coffee some mornings, so I didn't have enough money. But they were pretty cool and they just let me work out on the desk. So that was generally what it was like. Like, I'd get in there and then I'd just follow the tower cranes around, because for me that was almost just like the pot of gold at the end of a rainbow. If I could see a tower crane, there's work. So I'd just drive around to the tower cranes every day. Like, it wouldn't matter if I got to know the day before. Hey guys, how you going? Back again. So constantly putting myself outside of my comfort zone. Like, I was living outside of my comfort zone. I think the only time I was ever in my comfort zone was when I was asleep, And so it was like 4:30 starts and midnight sleeps, if not later. And then, we were really fortunate that after that period, we end up getting like an attic. But I was living and working in the same place I was sleeping. It was so consuming. You kind of lose concept of time and you lose touch with all your friends. Like, and it's a sacrifice that it's tough, because you see everyone else having a hell of a time and you're kind of sitting there questioning yourself, shit, these guys are all having an absolute bout of a weekend. I'm kind of sitting up here in my little nana flat, curtains shut, trying to get some work done. Is it kind of all worth it? Do you know what I mean? So you're constantly doubting yourself. Like, constant doubt is a thing. I think the thing that overcome the doubt or pushed it out would just be I was probably too proud to fail. Like, that was probably it. I was too proud to fail, and I'd told too many people to fail. So it was probably more ego driven as to what kind of kept me going. But every young bloke's got that.
Healthy ego?
Yeah. Healthy at times, unhealthy at times, but that was probably it. It was just tough. It's quite hard to explain if you have not kind of from the outside in. But the best way to explain it is just grueling, grim, real grim.
Lonely journey. Lots of entrepreneurs always talk about that, right? Just how long the hours are, and when you were first starting, did you ever have serious second doubts or ever consider stopping? Or did you have the sort of goal in mind? Because it's, meeting you from this past 20 minutes, it seems like you've got a really competitive sort of personality, and that sort of natural drive and hunger is always there.
Yeah, it's funny, like I never thought about quitting. Again, probably from the pride thing. It probably comes back to my upbringing a little bit. I'll touch in on it because it probably gives some context as to where the drive comes from. We grew up in a really religious home, to the point where I wasn't allowed to play with people. I wasn't allowed to play football with people that weren't involved in my church or Christian.
So you could only play with kids from the same church.
Yeah. So it was like, I was friggin' horror. Like I thought I was all right. And
then you feel like the man,
playing rugby, and I was like, come on, like give me a shot out there, And then my dad kind of convinced his dad and the pastor to let me go and play. So he snuck me off to a game to go and play for my primary school. And I was just over the moon to be there. I was at like 11. And we played Manga Papa, and I'll never forget, we lost. And I went to like go and find my dad after the game. And I just saw him driving off. And I was kind of like, I know exactly what that means. So I walked home.
And you're like, that's my ride home?
I was just like, but I knew because like he was so competitive with me. And all of our siblings got really different like relationships with him, which is cool. But I probably got the tougher end of the stick of kind of the competitiveness and stuff like that. So I'll never forget, I had to walk home. It would have been a few K. And I got home. I said, "Oh, what was that about?" He said, "I'm not taking losers home." He said, "If you want to ride home, you've got to win. If you lose, I'm not taking you home."
Wow.
So it started from there, right? Like, and that was it. It's just like instantly, like everything was about winning. It like took the fun out of it, And only now I'm really, well, not only now, but the last couple of years have been really enjoyable. But in order to win, sometimes you just have to win ugly, and that's the thing. So I guess that competitive nature was installed at me from a young age. And it was just about trying to kind of make that competitiveness as healthy as possible when I could.
Yeah.
But I did everything I could, winning came first and having fun came second. That was kind of always the way.
I'm just thinking, as a father myself to a 6-year-old, if I ever did that to my daughter, don't think she'd ever come back to my house. But yeah,
my dad wouldn't have tried that on his daughters, that's for sure.
It's the tough love. And do you think that experience with your father, and looking back now in hindsight, was actually a really positive interaction that you had in its unique way?
Yeah, it was like massively helpful to where I am today, and I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if I didn't have that kind of tough love from a young age. I started work at like 12, and because he was a caretaker, I had to start work at kind of like 6 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd kind of, or a little bit earlier, and then I'd get home kind of 8 o'clock, and then I'd jump on the bike, go to bike to intermediate, come home, get back over to the school 3:30, and then kind of work till 5 or 5:30. From the time I was 12, so it was kind of like that, and then all it became about from 11 was work and football. And football was only about winning, and then it came to the point where work was only about winning. I wanted to make sure I was the best lawnmower in Gisborne, right? I got to drive past the lawns every day, and I just wanted to make sure it looked immaculate. So I kind of found a competition in everything I did.
What skills did you bring over from footy? Obviously, the winning mentality. What skills did you take over from football, sports, being a high-performing athlete into the business world?
Definitely the competitiveness. I was kind of like exposed to quite a few cool coaches who I kind of saw treat certain players differently, at the time I never understood it. I was always kind of thought, why do these people get different treatment, or why? Within good reason. Some people were just unnecessary, but do you know what I mean? And it was actually just to get the best out of each player. So I kind of started to think about, as ALH grew, how can I kind of evolve to a coach and a support person, and how can I get the best out of each person by understanding them? So probably just seeing how some of the coaches interacted with me and other players in the team was actually a really cool experience, and that's something I took into that. And I think the other thing I probably took is the professionalism. Like, whenever we were travelling, we were always travelling in nice gears. We always kind of had our uniform on, and I always took a lot of pride in the uniform that we wore, and we had to kind of make sure we were in our number ones and presented well and transferred that over. And I think that has given ALH a really good element of, professionalism. It's that ALH are always going to be presented well and take pride in how we kind of present ourselves to clients, staff, and anyone really. So.
That's awesome, man. Just talking about ALH at the moment, where is the business at the moment? Because, I look on LinkedIn or on your socials, and you guys are just growing like crazy. Well, you got branches in Auckland, Tauranga, Wellington, Hawke's Bay now too?
Yep. Next on the radar, I'd say would be Dunedin, Queenstown, and probably Hamilton and Palmy. So those are probably the lowest dangling fruits where we want to kind of end up going. But as a business, we're just in hyper growth mode still. We base a lot of our growth on revenue. That's kind of a real good trigger for us to note. So last year we did 6 mil in revenue across one branch. And then we expanded this financial year, and we'll end up coming in about 14.5 mil.
Wow.
So big growth, but then next year we're going for 28, you know. So, and if we didn't have COVID, we think we probably would have got 18. So,
wow. So you're looking at like 100% sort of revenue growth?
Yeah. I'm dead set confident and hunkering down till this gets to 100 million revenue.
Wow.
And that's kind of where we're kind of, we're kind of employing almost every 3 or 4 weeks at the moment. It's kind of as soon as we can. So, and it makes it easier with a great team that we have, the boys here in Welling, man, they're just Josh E, got Connor in there, man, they're just a good bunch of fellas, like I think the real privilege that I get now is even when I just come down, I just kind of come down and sit and work in their office, it's their space. I just pull up on the coffee table and kind of get through what I need to. I'm not necessarily there to do anything necessarily structural or on a strategy basis. Chase's running that branch like an absolute weapon and giving it a real good go, and I'm just there to support it and help wherever I can. And we've got that same ability in every branch, which is really awesome, and I think our average age is 28. So we've kind of got 24 internal staff come April, and we just moving into a new office in Auckland actually, which kind of thinks that we could probably go in Auckland, we could double, which means our Auckland would probably be at 25 in a year. So start to really get going. So, but yeah, that's where we're at the moment. So we've got the 4 branches, loving it, learning a load, kind of. My goal is to never feel like I'm not exposed to a learning opportunity that day. So as long as I'm learning, cool. I'm still incredibly passionate and focused on the task at hand, and I can't see me not being exposed to learnings for a long, long time.
Yeah, lifelong journey, lifelong journey, bro.
Absolutely.
And I think speaking about learning, how do you identify, perhaps your blind spots or your, lack for a better term, weak areas, if it's around, business acumen, financial reporting, something I'm terrible at, how do you identify those weak spots?
If I don't identify them, Rob definitely identifies them and lets me know about them. But quite often I'm pretty self-aware as to where my weaknesses are. And it's kind of just making, if you talk to the boys or anyone at ALH, we operate on 3 kind of things. We've got a non-functional, functional, and optimal scenario in everything we do. As long as my weak points are functional, that's I'm happy with. And as long as my strengths are above optimal, that's kind of what I focus on. But the weak points, you just have to make sure you're bringing on people into the team that that strengthen my weaknesses, and that's what we've done really well. So I don't necessarily feel too exposed to my weaknesses, which is really great. So on a business perspective, like I learned more in the first few years than I did in anything. And you actually kind of, it's almost like when you play a sport, right? You know whether you're fit or fast or technically gifted. You kind of know that in business. You kind of instantly know where your weaknesses are, where your strengths are, and it's just about developing them, just like you would with anything else. So it's not getting too caught up on the things you're not going to be a superstar at, and just making sure you're happy and functional. If I have to jump into that area of the business, I can still function at a high level.
How would you describe your leadership qualities, and have you found it intimidating at all being so young and fronting a multi-million-dollar company?
My leadership qualities, I'd probably say if I had to describe how I'd say I'd be described by other people as a leader, very stern and honest, but really supportive and encouraging on constantly developing and growing everyone around me and the team, and just being a real team player. Like I like leading by example. I make sure I'm doing everything I can, maximising my weeks. I don't, I'm always really conscious of making sure I'm perceiving myself well, and just trying to be a lot more, having a mature approach and perception than probably my age, and that's probably goes back to the next question. Was it intimidating? Only ever once, probably in the last few years, if I had someone try and have a hack at me saying, oh, well, clearly this fella's just operating at his age. And the honest truth is ALH is a bigger business than the fella that was saying that. Do you know what I mean? So you're kind of hang on a minute.
Get out of there.
Yeah, just let us keep doing our thing. And you're going to have that. But I never really let that get in my way. And I think that's probably what got me into a lot of boardrooms and meeting rooms initially, right? Like I wouldn't go in there and expect to get a free run because I was a young guy or anything like that. I was just in there, I couldn't care less. And I think growing up in Gizzy allowed me to, or encouraged me, and actually didn't give me an option to learn how to talk with people who were 1 year away from being in a gang to high-level businessmen. So it was really fantastic, really, because I had a massive opportunity to speak to all walks of life. Yeah. So I was kind of already prepared for that when I got into the kind of business. It didn't matter. I could kind of talk to our on-site team, but then I could go and have a high-level chat with Rob and didn't feel like I was out of place.
I think a really common theme that I see across many entrepreneurs, and even the really high-level world-famous ones like Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, etc., they, for whatever reason, the education system didn't seem to work for them. They're all university dropouts or high school dropouts. Yet in the business world, they really thrive. Yeah. You were saying earlier around university and struggling with grades and stuff, but then in the practical sense, you're absolutely smashing business. What was it that made you not really fit into that educational model, bro?
Man, I just I can't sit still and read off a piece of paper and do it. I still can't.
Same.
If I have to get told what to do on an instruction manual, I'm hopeless. Yeah. There's so many things. Well, not so many things. There's a few things that I still have to get held through. I'm going through step by step processes. So I think it was kind of almost being put into a box and not being given the opportunity to do it my way. I always really pissed me off. You know what I mean? It's still to this day. I don't. I've never read a chapter book. I've promised my girlfriend's dad that I'll read his book. I'm 3 pages in. I've had it for a month, but I just struggle to sit still and do that, because I kind of think, I'm learning, but I like watching videos and stuff like that, and that definitely wasn't how it got done at school, So I just didn't. I think the answer to the question from my end was I didn't like feeling like I was put in a box and that was the only walls I could look at and how to work with. And that was probably it for me,
Yeah. What lately has been some of your the personal or professional development? I know you're really into running, and you see well-being as pretty critical to success. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, I think ALH just had a really big year, and there's been a couple of like key factors that I think have added to that. We've grown as a business, and the individuals have actually started to hit their succession points. Some of our key leaders, which takes a lot of like consumption and stress off me in areas where I'm not actually very helpful. Personal, like I've had to take 4 months off running, so I'm currently not running at the moment just because of my heart. But I'm in the gym every day. And just having consistent routine and eating well. You know, I kind of get up at 5 o'clock. I promised myself I'll give myself an hour more sleep a night. So I get up at 5, not 4.
So it used to be 4.
Used to be 4, like 4:30.
Man.
So I get up at like 5. I'm kind of on my way to the gym at 5:15. There at 5:30, get in a session. I'm only in there for 40 minutes, 45 minutes, jump in the steam room or the sauna. And then I'll always eat the same breakfast. I eat the same
breakfast.
breakfast.
What's
I eat 3
Ricky?
poached eggs, 1 piece of toast, cider, like mushrooms and tomatoes, and that's kind of it. So every breakfast, every day.
7 days a week.
7 days a week, I have the same breakfast.
You either mix it up, you go to a cafe, eggs Benny.
Nah, and honestly, ask anyone who's around me, they'll say that that's exactly the same order. And I just like to know that it's consistent, right? Because I know what fuel it's like. I know exactly what fuel I'm putting in my body that morning, and I'm putting in fuel after the same exercise. So at least I've started my morning how I wanted to start it. However my day ends up, that's not necessarily in my control, but at least I know I've won the morning and I've directed the rudder on where I want it to go. So I just like having consistency and just like not trying to eat shit. Do you know what I mean? Like just trying to make sure. Even at ALH, like we just have a conscious effort. We don't have junk food in the office. Nice. We get everyone a gym membership and encourage everyone to go and get a workout in the day. And just having good friends around too. Like, I've got a couple of great friends, and my friends are just as competitive as I am. And we kind of almost texting each other who's up earliest, who's at the gym earliest, and having that, and equally kind of just making Auckland a bit more of a base. I've kind of always bounced around. My girlfriend's awesome. She adds a heap of consistency and support. And look, if I was be honest, I probably wouldn't be the ideal candidate for a boyfriend with how much I travel and work. So it's kind of like making sure you have the right people around you all the time.
Yep.
And friends and family. I've got great friends and family friends in Auckland, and a real good support crew, and family are really good. So
yeah. Oh, that's awesome, bro. Have you done many sort of endurance challenges with your running? I guess you must have to monitor it quite closely with your heart condition.
So I got told I can only do half an hour a day. And then I kind of was pushing that out a little bit, and I was maximising that half an hour, trying to get as quick as I could.
I've seen your splits on Strava.
Mate, I
You're
started to get going.
man.
Yeah, I started to get going. But I have done a marathon. But the realistic outcome is that I'll never realistically be allowed to run more than half an hour probably for the rest of my life. And that's okay. You just have to find peace with it and kind of enjoy the exercise that I can do within it. So, but, equally it's just about trying to transfer that and find enjoyment in the gym opposed to the running. It takes a bit of a time, and I'm not necessarily as into it, but it's still exercise, and exercise is so important, I reckon, for mental clarity and anything.
Yeah. Have you got any tips for anybody out here, especially around networking, and how you've been able to, network and build relationships with people like Rob?
I think when I met Rob, and I think I'll meet the likes of Rob, I didn't know who the hell Rob was. Like when I first met him, right? Like I kind of didn't know what he was about. The respect he had in the country, and I think just taking everyone for who they are, like and taking each person for who they are. Like last thing people who've got a bit of an impressive CV want to probably do is have people coming in and kind of
chatting their ear off,
and buddy scrubbing up to them. It's kind of like
be authentic.
Just be authentic and be you. And I think that's kind of what I've always been, that person. I couldn't really care less who or what, and I'll respect achievements and things, absolutely, in the person, but it's not like I get any special treatment because of that. So I think that would be it. It's just be genuine and don't rush those things. I kind of tripped upon Rob at a fluke, absolute fluke.
What's the story behind that? How did you guys meet?
I used to, just through a mutual friend really. So, and just kind of ended up going to a dinner and he was there and then we just got along really, really well. And got along with his wife really well, Sarah, who's fantastic. And then that would have been like 7 years ago. And from there, they've just been fantastic for me. Like Sarah's got 2 girls. I've got 2 little sisters almost now. And it's just great having a family in Auckland, you know, and they kind of make me feel like I've got a home there if I ever have to, and it's always been a really good relationship with them all, and it's been really respectful. And I think the great thing is they've always been really honest with me and kept me accountable and kept kind of making sure I'm meeting the standard that I want of myself too. So it's just good having people holding you accountable when sometimes it might not be so easy to be like that, when you can kind of get carried away a little bit, you know, just making sure you
stay grounded. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome, mate. I think everybody needs those sort of networks around them and people who can have really frank and honest conversations when shit, you know, has gone good, but also at the same time, if you need to be checked about something or look at blind spots and stuff. Yeah. Are you like a mentor to anybody? Do you play that sort of role for anybody out there?
Not intentionally. I don't.
After this podcast, you'll get like thousands of... No, not ever.
Not intentionally. I don't like... And being transparent, I don't necessarily feel like I'm in the position to mentor anyone. Like, just because I've got a lot more I want to achieve and do before I feel like I give anyone direction. I'm still realistically an apprentice in the world of business. Do you know what I mean? It's not necessarily like I don't think I'd warrant necessarily guiding someone in our ALH environment. Yeah, absolutely. But external to that, it's kind of I'm always, you know, people up for a coffee. I'm always happy to have coffees with people who might take something from the coffee that we say. But I just think I've got to get way more runs on the board before I start helping people out, you know.
Yeah. Well, don't undermine yourself. I'm sure you can provide a lot of value to people there, even if it is just through coffee. Do you feel much pressure, bro, running this massive company, and you say you've got, you know, ambitions and goals to get the business to having 100 million in revenue? Do you put a lot of pressure on yourself?
Yeah, a ton. But I love pressure. I reckon pressure is a privilege. Yeah. Like, you know, I'd much rather the pressure of growing a business to 100 mil than the pressure of not being able to provide for my family or something like that. Do you know what I mean? So I never forget where I came from, and I'll never forget where I came from or what it was like. Like, I remember the pressures we had as a family. Like, Dad was a caretaker, Mum wasn't working, we had 4 kids. You know, it wasn't luxurious at all. You know, like, we didn't have any luxuries. So that pressure compared to my pressure, I just have to remind myself at times, it's like, just shut up and get going. But I love pressure. Like, I've come to almost be addicted to it. I think I'm constantly being ambitious with what I want the business to achieve and those people around us or in the business, what I want them to individually achieve. Because it's a lot easier just to set a steady growth plan, but I don't want that because I actually want pressure. To the point where if I go and play a game of golf, I suck at golf, but if I go and play golf, I'd much prefer to tee off last if there's a group watching or little things like that. Do you know what I mean? Any chance, or I'd much rather, I miss most of my parts, but I'd much rather have the last part, which has got the most pressure on it.
Yeah.
Anything like that where I can kind of put myself under pressure and give me a chance to adapt in a situation. I always thrive off it.
Yeah, I love that, man. I really do. Have you ever sconned a putt or something in front of a lot of people?
Not in front of people, but me and it was actually me, my girlfriend's sister's boyfriend, her family friend, and her dad. We all went down for this. We called it the Dumpling Classic. It was like a little like golf game that went down to Queenstown and played, and it was quite funny actually, because it was like my first entry into their family, and I was kind of like, I was doing the cool thing, like taking everyone down to play in Queenstown and stuff, and then ended up freaking like people were throwing their clubs and it was getting out of control. Me, it was all laughs at the end of it, but it was really competitive, and I think I sunk a putt I'll say it was from 15 yards, and that was probably the only putt I've ever sunk from that far, but I'll never forget it. And they won't either.
That's awesome.
The greenkeeper was watching, and his reaction was the best.
That's good. Who was throwing the clubs?
Tom was throwing the club, but we wrapped up the game on the 14th hole, and I'm not necessarily the best winner, right? So I was just like, I'm not even playing the rest of the game. You guys can play the rest. I'll just jump in the cart. And he's freaking flying his club 20 yards ahead of him. It was brilliant. I love seeing it.
Yeah. Oh, you got the partner in the right family then. It's good induction, right?
Yeah.
What are you like with goal setting as well? I was really keen to touch on that. We're obviously filming this podcast and recording it in 2022. It's in Feb. And during this time, a lot of people, set goals for themselves. Do you have a process around setting goals? How do you go about that?
I'd set a handful of goals, like maybe 3 or 4, at the start of the year. Personal, business, and health, and with some financial goals, right? But I just focus on the big one. Like, for instance, like we need to do 28 mils this financial year. My goals are financial year, right? Not kind of calendar. I just go for the big one. I just think that's what I need to do. I'm not going to get caught up on the little ones. I know the hurdles. I break down the big goal into like quarterly goals, monthly goals. So I know where I need to get to, but I just chase the big one.
Yeah.
And I don't kind of let anything else interfere with that.
Yeah. Yeah. How far away do you think you are to reaching that big goal of potentially, reaching 100 mil? No doubt I've got full confidence you get it. Do you think that's a 10-year thing?
I don't think it's more than 7 years away.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'd like to do it by then. I'd kind of be 34, kind of, knocking on 34, 35. If I could have that big hundy done by then I'd feel like I've kind of kicked a couple of goals and got a few runs on the board for sure.
Shit, that's still so young, right? That's crazy.
Yeah, gee,
do you feel like an old man?
I do, man.
Yeah.
Like, people go, oh, you're 27, you're 27. Geez, I don't feel 27. I feel 37 on a young day. You know what I mean? I've kind of been through the ringer a few times. So, don't feel as young as probably I am.
Yeah. How can, more people, I guess, get into business? Do you think, there's something needs to change a lot more in the educational system? Do you think people in New Zealand need to be a lot more sort of uplifting and cut away that sort of tall poppy syndrome bullshit?
Yeah.
How do you think we can encourage more entrepreneurs like you?
I think it has to come from the person, right? We can sit there and blame a load of variables. And don't get me wrong, a lot of them are contributing factors to probably a lot of people not going for their goals. But if you've got the fire in your belly and the hunger in you that you need to succeed, you'll get there. So it's just believing in that and just believe in yourself. Don't worry about what other people are saying. Don't worry about this. Don't worry about that. And just make sure you're only sharing your wins with the people who are going to uplift you. Don't go and shoot a shot too early. Don't go and tell too many people too many things, and just stick in your lane. Yeah. That'd be like, just stay in your bloody lane and go for it. And all gas, no brakes, you know?
All gas, no brakes.
And just go for it.
Yeah. And you've got that sort of mantra, right? Hard work works. Mm-hmm. Still swear by that?
Absolutely. It's compound time. Like, that would be my big thing. Like, if you're kind of doing 40 hours a week, you're kind of doing a bit over 2,000 hours a year. Or that might be wrong. But, or you just need to compound it. You just need to make sure you're doing more. Do you know what I mean? It's just, you want to make sure you're doing more. So why not do 80 hours a week and you do double the time? It would take someone to do something in 6 years, do it in 3, especially while you're young, Or do 100 hours, kind of, jam pack it. Like, compound time is so important. And that's been the one thing I'm really conscious of. Like, where is my time being allocated? Where shouldn't it be allocated? We don't need to stop allocating it, or we don't need to continue allocating it to get a compound effect. If you're doing 2 hours a week on something that's not effective, that's 100 hours a year. Do you know what I mean? That's 2.5 full 40-hour weeks that you've done in the office. If you break it down like that, it doesn't take much to veer off track. Do you know what I mean? And it doesn't take much to. I'm always reassessing my time. So compound time. You talk to anyone around me, they'll be like, geez, he just doesn't stop talking about it. But it's so important. If we ever have people in the office who necessarily aren't achieving what they want to be achieving, so I was like, okay, well, where did you spend your time this week? Okay, well, look, if you compound that out, you're you're wasting this and that. So compound time.
That's such a great, I've never heard of that. I've heard about compounding interest in terms of financial terms, but compounding time. I think as you get a little bit older, you also, really start thinking about how many more years you got left on the clock. And mortality becomes a real thing. Is there how do you stay really present with, always focusing around compounding your time? Is it something that you just have to remind yourself every day?
You have to be consistent with your time. And consistency is the first step towards leadership in my eyes. If you can't be consistent, then you're not a good leader. Or you're not even a leader. If you can be a great leader for 2 days a week but not 3, you're not a good leader. You got to be consistent. And consistency for me starts in that daytime. Do you know what I mean? I know that I'm doing 5 hours a week of exercise. I know what I'm doing. I know where my time is being allocated. And I know when my variables in my time or my calendar are that I necessarily don't actually have control over that, and that's okay. But the time that I can control, need to make sure if I compound it, it's in the appropriate place,
It's just the saddest thing, seeing especially young people who might be 22, 25, heck, even 30, and they don't have, they're just not going towards the right track. And I've got, mates that I know who aren't particularly swimming in the right direction. And I just think it's the most heartbreaking thing, seeing a young person not realising their potential and how much time they've got.
Yeah, and that stuff, it's tricky because I've had that a lot, and you see a lot of it. But the harshest thing and the reality is it's a them problem. It's not a me problem. It's not a someone else problem. And if they're going to change, I think one of the best bits of advice I've ever been told is, we had someone who wasn't performing in the office, and I was complaining like a whinging ex-girlfriend. And, I was like, oh my goodness, this and that. And I remember Rob said to me, he's like, well, you're actually just expecting something from someone that you just shouldn't be expecting. And I was like, oh my God, is that easy? Like, why are you expecting them to do that? They've never shown you the ability that they can. So it's a you problem for getting worked up and expecting more from something for something that they just can't deliver on. You kind of hear things like that and you're like, well, all right, then that makes everything a bit easier,
It's funny when things are broken down like that. It's like, oh shit, it's so simple.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes it a lot more simple when you look at it like that.
Totally, man. Hey, what's on the cards for the rest of your year for 2022, bro?
Heck, just growing ALH really.
Nice.
Just kind of, like I said before, right, all gas, no brakes, and making sure we're growing at a reliable and a reputable rate, and everyone in the business is getting exposed to learning opportunities and growing and upskilling themselves, I think. And making sure everyone's getting the best opportunity to do the best they can in within ALH. So that's that one, and constantly just trying to be as healthy as possible. Nice. That's always the big one, and kind of just taking day by day and appreciating each day that goes by and actually enjoying it and being as present as I can, That's the big thing.
Nice, bro. Love that, brother. We'll wrap up with some quick fire questions and a quote to end. But before we leave, where can people keep up with you and your mahi?
Oh, probably LinkedIn's my big one.
LinkedIn?
Probably with people, I've probably got a bit more followers than I thought I'd ever have on there. So yeah, LinkedIn's a good one. Jeez, I guess my Instagram's probably just full of ALH, golf, my girlfriend and my mates. So I don't know if that's necessarily worth following.
Yeah. What's your name on LinkedIn and stuff?
My name on LinkedIn will just be Israel Whitley, and same across everything.
Cool. Nice, man. Cool. We'll get to some tough and challenging quick-fire questions.
Cool.
They're not really that tough or challenging, to be honest. First one, what is the meaning of life?
Oof. Probably similar to what I said, just meaning of life, just being positive and being as happy as you can every day, starting the day how you want to, because you just don't know how you're going to end it. So enjoying it and respecting those people that have shown you respect, and just being as positive as you can, and trying to think about why some certain negative variables might be negative, and just be positive throughout it.
Love it, mate. Favourite packet of noodles?
Maggie chicken soup cup.
Nice. Had a few of them in your time, eh?
Yeah.
Favourite motto or quote?
Probably well, it's not really a motto, but compound time. Focus on compound time. That's it. And hard work works. There's no substitute for hard work.
Advice you wish you knew about when you were younger?
I don't probably wish I had any. Like, I think all the learnings I've had to date have been perfect timing. So probably, maybe I could have got going a year earlier, maybe, but who knows?
It's all about time, right?
Yeah.
What does legacy mean to you?
Legacy, I've never really thought about that. I just think having a positive impact, and if I got bloody hit by a bus tomorrow, as long as I've helped people and at least helped or assisted put people on a track that they wouldn't have been on without me, I'd probably be upstairs, pretty happy and satisfied with that.
If you could change one thing in New Zealand, what would this be? It could be theoretical, it can be a legitimate thing, it could,
I'll keep politics out of it, but
hey, let it go, man.
If I could change one thing in New Zealand, what would it be? Heck, I just wish we could be travelling at the moment. I think travelling is really cool, and obviously just assisting with poverty and probably putting more infrastructure on getting Kiwis into work, and probably not giving too many handouts, and actually just trying to support and help people, because handouts don't necessarily go too far.
Nice one. What do you believe is the main thing that is holding back young New Zealanders?
Just belief within themselves. You just got to back yourself, It's you against the world, and I always thought about that myself, and I won't ever stop thinking about that. You're in charge of your own destiny, no one else. No one can help that, and it's got to come from within you.
Love that, brother.
Cheers, bro.
So good. Okay, we'll finish on a quote. This one's from David Goggins. He's
my man.
Yeah, my man. He is a madman. I thought it'd be pretty fitting for this podcast. Here we go. We all need small sparks, small accomplishments in our lives to fuel the big ones, because it's the small sparks which start small fires that eventually build enough heat to burn the whole fucking forest down. Boom.
Magic.